Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Robert Bonomo. Robert is a filmmaker, blogger, novelist, and esotericist. He has lived and worked in Madrid, San Francisco, Buenos Aires, Kamchatka, Miami, Valencia, Cartagena, New York, Luoyang, China, and a few other not-so-interesting places. He has 3 novels, Twilight Breakout, Cactus Land, and his latest release, Your Love Incomplete, all available as free downloads on Smashwords. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Hello, Robert. It's nice to have you. And not to mention how you are in my site is your documentary, The 21 Faces of God.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just released that in August. So.
Yes, so on the tarot, and it's sensational. Everyone should, just for that alone, check you out and check it out. It's I actually wanted more of it. I'm just gonna say that straight up.
Wow.
It was not enough. So I like the way you put it together. The information is great. It's very well done.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that.
So with that, let's talk about your early life, shall we?
Sure.
I'd like to also mention you've moved, it seems like, as much as I, but into way farther, more extreme places. I admire a traveler. It's a certain mindset.
Yeah, and I think as we go in a little in the background, I think it's almost genetic. It's just I can't stand still.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. I get the window whip and I itch and I'm like, all right, where am I going now?
It gets boring in one place. I'm ready to move. It's like I've been here 20 years now.
It's like things play out, you know. It's like, all right, I've been immersed here.
Right.
So on that, tell us about the stuff from your early life, just way back in the recesses that stick out. And this includes, of course, pop culture, you know, things that may have inspired you, fashion, cartoons, and all that. And also in specific, if you had a relationship with nature.
Yeah, because I was born in Long Island, very close to the Brookhaven National Lab. And so it seems, you know, if you're not familiar with Long Island, it's very rural, that area,
it's
right near the ocean.
Central Eastern Long Island, like Suffolk County.
Exactly, it's Suffolk County.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting place because there's lots of physicists there. So like in our block, say you had an electrician, but he was an electrician at a lab where they were doing some wild stuff. I think they did like nuclear stuff, and it was interesting.
They did mind control. They did.
Right. Yeah, the Brookhaven National Lab is pretty famous. There's been a lot of pretty important things done there.
There were a lot of pre-paperclip Nazis working at Brookhaven back after the war, until the Pentagon found out they were working on mind control, or Congress rather. And this is according to Al Bulick, if you ever heard his story, that they all transitioned over to Camp Hero, and that became the Montauk Project.
Yeah, and I've heard that connection between Brookhaven. And I remember some of my first memories was playing chess with the kid of a physicist at the Brookhaven National Lab.
You were probably in the programs, didn't I?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a whole other subject, too. That's great.
But this is just one weird thing that just popped out of my memory. I was in this room playing with these kids of this physicist, and I remember my father leaving the room very annoyed. You know, when you're a kid, you don't understand. Like, it's like the first time an adult is angry at another adult. And it was with a physicist. So it was kind of strange. I had no idea what it was about. I never learned that was one of my first memories. Yes.
That is very intriguing. And I'm sure a lot of our core group, I'm thinking of Lee immediately, will find that intriguing.
Yeah.
I mean, you really could have been in the programs without knowing it. Of course, no one knows it really.
Yeah, I mean, and that was just it was a peculiar play. And I remember I did play a lot in the forest. We had a forest behind the house, and there was a little house. There was an abandoned house back there, and we used to go play around. This was very young, so I do remember that. And my first memory, like key memory, was very strange. It was in a den. You remember back? I'm 50, so do you remember when they had paneling? You know, we had that horrible paneling. Everyone had that paneling.
Terrible 70s paneling was so gross. Yes.
Oh my God.
My basement was full of it.
Yes. My whole house was full of that stuff. And I remember I was in a den full of that paneling, and the old man was wrapping packaging. And that Frankenstein, do you remember the old Frankenstein, the one from the 30s?
Boris Karloff?
When he throws the girl into the lake?
Yes.
With the flower? That's my first memory.
Oh my God.
So talk about pop culture.
Oh, that's great. That's great that that's your first memory. And I really like how that plays into Brookhaven and playing chess over there too.
With the child of Nazi scientist.
Right, totally. So speaking of this, of that Frankenstein, did that scare you? Were you intrigued by it?
Yeah, this is a kind of a bizarre story. My daughters watched that film when she was about 7 and was terrified for years. And it's really strange that because I was working away from home and I came back and my wife said, "Oh, she saw some horror movie." And apparently it was that Frankenstein movie. So it affected me and it affected my daughter, which is kind of bizarre. But I'm sorry, what did you ask?
If it had, how it affected you, if you actually found it scary.
You know, it's strange. I don't remember it as a bad memory. I just remember the old man putting the packages like under one of those horrible 70s couches with the paneling and watching Frankenstein toss this little girl into the lake with the flowers. So it's not a bad memory. It's just a memory.
Yeah. It's iconic too. So we've got you in Long Island. We've got you with a love of the woods and tied into programs.
Yeah. And with imaginary friends. At that age, I remember I had imaginary friends.
Oh, could you tell us a little bit about them?
All I remember was their names were Michael and Susan. And my sisters used to laugh about a story where somebody sat on a chair and I started crying. I don't remember this. And that apparently it was because I saw them on this chair and someone sat on the chair.
How did they communicate with you? I
wish I could remember. No, I don't remember.
I don't. Do you remember any of their the physical attributes with them?
Were they real or were they imaginary? I mean, did you have conversations with them, do you think, or was it more?
I think I did, but I can't say I remember. I can't say I remember. You know what I mean? When I remember the names, I see some vague images, but I can't remember any sort of interaction. But I feel like they were close to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the imaginary friends really tie deeply into all this stuff for me because it's just it goes in part, it's part and parcel with all this, and we don't get a lot of that coming forward. I don't directly ask that question, but it's relevant. So
there's a lot of shame related to it. I remember everyone was like, "You got to stop." You have to stop with that. And it's almost like for a long time I was so ashamed of that, there was something wrong with it. But now, who cares?
Also,
I made a movie about the tarot, right?
Right.
What really? What I don't understand why it was originally shameful in the first place. I never got that.
I think parents, at least at that period, if you talked like that, they were like, "Shut up, it's not real." I think because they might think you actually had some kind of mental illness, or maybe I don't know.
And yet they're so common. They're so common.
Oh, they must be.
They really are. I had one. Her name was Julie, and I felt no shame with it. I thought she had a full name, and it was my mother's maiden name, and so my mother just thought it was somehow, I don't know, related to maybe some trauma of her not being around. But this one had more of I think almost classic angelic look. She actually had wings.
Oh, wow.
Did your
Yeah.
mom's parents have like lose a kid anytime?
Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom did. Yeah. There's it was her mother's twin.
So that could have been Julie.
Yes, but that twin's name was Fontel. So, and I think it was a boy. I have a postmortem picture of it. Interestingly enough, I'm looking at right now. Okay, so also in pop culture stuff early on, that Frankenstein moment, were there cartoons and stuff you liked?
Oh, yeah. And actually, I was listening to the talk you had with Mike Williams. It's that same era. So my family moved to Florida when I was, and that was kind of traumatic because
How old
the
were you when that
nature-
happened?
I think I was like 6, 7.
You got to watch out for Florida man down there.
And for me, the smells were so different. The smells just shocked me. That smell of chlorine and bright green. It's not that dark green, it's that bright green, and the humidity and those types of things. I never felt like, I always felt like I was in a foreign environment in Florida. I never physically could connect.
Yeah, me too. I've never been. Yeah, and I have family in Georgia, so Florida is so right there. But I do like the Panhandle side better. I will say that's going down to Panacea and all that is so great over there. Okay, so was that the first move from Long Island? Okay, and so that was a little bit traumatic.
I think it was because there was always a sense of wanting to go back somewhere. I always had that feeling of this is where I should be. I should be back there. And I think that never left. And I think that happens to a lot of people who move to Florida. You always have this feeling like sort of a fish out of water.
Sorry, Floridians. We're like not the Florida people.
I wonder if it's common amongst kids who move young all the time. Because I was born in Long Island as well, and we moved to Chicago, but we moved back and forth like 80 times. So it was 5 times between New York and Chicago. But yeah, I can totally get that. You never know where your home is. Like,
yeah. And you miss that something, I think, where you're born and that connection and the smells. I think the smell for me was really important too.
When I moved to Atlanta from Chicago, for at least 3 months, it felt like I was on vacation because of the different atmosphere here, the climate, everything. It was almost like I was on vacation. Maybe that would contribute to the feeling of there's going to be going home sometime.
Yeah. Could be.
Did you have dreams and perhaps like nightmares around the time you moved?
I have to say that the remembered dreams don't begin till about 15. Okay. I can't really remember a dream before that. I had an explosion of dreams when I was about 15 or 16. But before that, I assume I dreamed, but I can't remember any of them.
So at this time, so like in that 6 or 7 age range, when you're in Florida, did you, the first question I actually had was, were you in a military family at all? Were you moving around because of that, or?
No. But important in my family history is that my parents were a bit older. So my father was in the Second World War, as well as my 2 uncles. So I was raised with a very kind of a different, worldview.
Yes.
So, I would hear about stories of Europe and the Pacific and wars and all that kind of stuff as a kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, that part of having a father and all of my uncles actually were veterans of the Second World War.
Yeah, and that's interesting information too, because it does pin you into, it gives you context to a major part of our history, whatever that history really is. It connects you to it in a firsthand way, where this is your parents. Okay, so around this time, 6 or 7, you've moved to Florida from Long Island. Besides the smells and not really being in love with some of that. How did you fare there? Were you comfortable eventually? Did you make friends easily? What
Oh yeah.
nature?
And we lived in sort of like a suburban area, you know? So
Yeah.
there was a bunch of kids on the block, and we were just like a band of hooligans, you know?
Oh,
I mean,
nice.
you remember that time
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard you get where basically you came home and your mother said, "Did you do your homework?" Of course, and then you just
Outside.
ran out. You had to be
Yes.
back for dinner.
Yes.
You know?
That's our generation. That is.
That was it. I never did homework. I mean, homework? I was like, "What?"
Yeah, that doesn't happen I don't think so much anymore. You could just be gone all day, like after homework was done.
I
So-
remember like on Sundays, we'd go to mass, then we'd have breakfast, go someplace, have breakfast, and get home. And it was just like, get rid of those clothes. And I would play football until the ball would hit us in the eye because you couldn't see it. And then you'd go home. That was it. You know, when you were just getting hella
Oh my
banged in the
goodness.
head. Yeah.
So
It was a
were you
different time.
were you brought up Catholic?
Very Catholic. I came from a very strict, old school Catholic family. I mean, going to mass on Sunday was just like, eating dinner. You had to go.
Yeah. Did you and so on that, what was your relationship with Catholicism? Did you enjoy it? Was it something you just couldn't wait till you didn't have to go?
Uh-huh.
How'd you feel about it back then?
You have to remember, though, I just, in that generation, so I had older parents. My grandmother, who's a big influence on me, was born in 1898.
Yeah.
So on my mother's side, very Irish Catholic. So when you're Irish Catholic, like very Irish Catholic, the
Mhm.
Catholicism, your Irishness, it's all mixed together. So it's like
Yes.
saying, I was raised Irish, but I didn't feel Irish. It's like you're Catholic, that's who you are. And remember, I mean, there's saints. We had virgins and saints. And when
Yeah.
I was a basketball player, and so I would always ask for novenas. Grams, I need a novena. I've got a big game tomorrow. I have a test. Did you study? Yes. So my grandmother would say novena. So, I mean, that was all like when I hear chaos magicians, it's like they've discovered spirituality and like entities. I'm like, come on, guys. This has been going on for a long time. You know what I mean?
This is what I love, and this is why I always say this. I mean, I grew up in an Irish household, but there was no religion. I don't remember it, but I hear that my Irish grandmother Macaulay was that it was Protestant, but I never saw her go to
Mhm.
church. There was no pictures, nothing. It was dry, dry, dry. But when I encountered Catholicism later, I fell in love with it because of the rituals, the smells, the icon. It's so incredibly beautiful and overwhelming. Just in midnight mass and in a proper cathedral with the chorus and the choir and
Oh
all
my
that,
God.
unbelievable, just unbelievable. And so I experienced it without having to, without any of the hangups, I guess, and just got to experience it through like a sense of art and how it actually was visceral. And so I've taken that into my whole life and through chaos magic and all that. It's like, well, that's always there. We have this example.
Oh, yeah. So when I hear chaos magicians, for me, that's like second nature. Of their
Yes.
entities, there's thousands of. My grandmother had virgins for this, saints for that.
Yes. Yes.
And the other thing was in Catholicism, the wonderful thing about Catholicism, I think, is the feminine aspect. So the virgins were probably more important than anything.
Yes.
And then you had Jesus and the saints and all that stuff. But when you were in trouble, you always prayed to the virgin. They're the ones that are going to help you. The Jesus guys, yeah, maybe, but that became a little abstract. And the idea of God, I don't think, at least traditional Irish Catholics, they have no conception of God. I mean,
Yeah.
like God the Father, who's that?
Yeah.
It's too abstract. Religion was something that you used when you needed it. I
Yeah.
need this, need that. You ask, and sometimes you get, sometimes you don't.
Well, right. I mean, in the end, who knows? That's also, I've got to tell you, that's what drew me in was all of this, the female energy there. And you'd see
Mhm.
some of these Mary statues in their robe. I have one. It's a Polish one. And it's 1800s. It's behind glass. It's a shadow box, but her robe looks like a gigantic vagina. And it's just the way her robe is. And it's amazing. I love Our Lady of Sorrows. She's really the one
Oh, right,
that
right.
speaks to me. Those images are incredible. Absolute. And the Black Madonna. Oh my God.
Oh, right, right,
I
right.
think she's
Yeah.
in the live chat, by the way.
Our Lady of Sorrows.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
excellent.
I'm sorry, it's
Well,
Lady of the Various Sorrows.
Oh, excellent. Well, welcome. I'm not in the chat. Okay, so all right, we've got this Catholicism thing. So I want to stick back here for a minute, but I also want to just take the religion thing and get it out of the way. So
Sure.
are you still Catholic?
That's a good question. Well, so I mean, just to make the long story short, in my 20s, I think like a lot of people, I became a total atheist and sort of rejected all the church stuff. Then I went east to all the Zen stuff. And then I came back, but I would consider myself, Miguel asked me this, I would say I consider myself sort of like a Gnostic esoteric Christian. But behind me, I have about 4 virgins behind me. So and I have a big Christ. So I don't know. I wouldn't. But if you ask me, do I believe in the Apostles' Creed? Absolutely not.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Apollo Creed?
later on, we can. No, the Apostles'
Apostles'
Creed.
Jerry.
Going back to those that Rocky stuff.
I love Jerry.
I was just clarifying for the listener.
But I do have, we can talk about this later, but I do have sort of a personal myth that is connected to the Cathars. And of course,
Give
the
it to us right now.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't learn who the Cathars were until I was in my 40s. I was a history major. Never knew who they were. And the Cathars were a Gnostic, dualistic break-off from the Catholic Church in the 11th and 12th century. And in the 13th century, they were exterminated in the Albigensian Crusade. When I heard about this, I got really interested in them, very interested in them. And then I found something very interesting. My last name is Bonomo. And the Cathars began in Italy. And my father's family's from Italy, so I've spent a lot of time in Italy and whatnot. The Cathars called themselves Bonomi, good people. That's what they called themselves. And not only is my grandfather Bonomo, my grandmother was Bonomi. It's like the plural. So I felt this real weird connection. And where I live is very close to Montsegur, one of the last places where they were exterminated. And I actually went there. It's like a pilgrimage there. I feel very connected to the Cathars. So to answer your question about being Catholic, I probably feel more Cathar than Catholic, which is kind of strange.
No, not at all. And that's great. And that's kind of how these things have, I think people that are open, there's like a natural evolution, and we never get away. This is why Nox Mente gets into your roots. We never get away from our roots. This is our these are the dice we rolled with, this is what sets up the symbols for the rest of the play. That's great. I and also in your journeys, I love that you had that exposure to the Eastern stuff. I heavily vibe with it, especially the Hindi stuff. Yeah, I find it all seamlessly kind of, there's a thread, Robert, isn't there? That kind of holds everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, when you look back, then it does make a lot more sense. You're like, oh, that's why that happened. Why did this happen? Yeah, it all does kind of fit.
It does, and we see it in tools such as the tarot, which you presented us with a documentary on, and it's all woven into the symbols in anyone searching for self in the world, and tarot is certainly an oracle of searching.
Absolutely.
Okay, so back there in these early days. So from how long did you stay in Florida?
Oh, I stayed in Florida basically till I graduated from college.
Okay, and so let's move up to that time when you're around 15, and the dreams started dropping in on you.
Yeah, this was just a really crucial point in my life. I started having just tons of dreams. Some were recurring. And then I had literally what the Jungians call that big dream. When you have a dream that you understand it's not personal. There's something transpersonal about it, or the meaning is more collective. And it was just mind-boggling, apocalyptic dream. And when I had that dream, I think that kind of changed everything, because then I realized I have to write this at some point. And that dream and that whole series of dreams became my novel, Cactus Land. That's the name of my website, is Cactus Land. But that period of just intense dreaming changed my entire life.
Is there, okay, so can you give us, can you tell us a little bit about the big dream from that period?
Yeah, so I was in a basement with my mother, and it's very interesting. My mother had a very close friend who was a Maryknoll nun and very into liberation theology. She was a communist and all this kind of stuff. So it was really interesting for me to have this. So we're together in a basement waiting for the apocalypse. And that woman, the Maryknoll nun,
that's still current.
she leaves. She says, I have to leave. And this was really interesting. Then we get a phone call from her. Do you guys remember the film Failsafe?
Based on the book, the 60s book?
Yeah. There was a film with where basically there's it's like a nuclear war type film.
Yeah, it's black and white. It's an old movie.
Right.
Yep.
So then this woman calls me and she says, you need to go to this stadium when the bombing stops. And then the phone melts, just like in Failsafe, when he's talking to the woman and the phone melts when the bomb goes off in New York. So I get off, I go to the stadium, there's all these people, everything's bombed out, and I look up to the sky and I see a cloud becomes a throne, and there's like a Caesar figure on this throne with a book in his hand. And he doesn't say it, but he communicates it. The book, he kind of throws the book and it begins to spin. And he says, we don't need this anymore. And then he dissolves. And there's a stadium of people looking up. And that's it. That's the end of the dream. That's the end of my novel. So if you know that's what's coming if you read Cactus Land. But that's dream,
incredible imagery.
I think I had some sort of sense that maybe there's something personal here, but there's a lot that's not. That means something else. Yeah.
And okay, so did this in this period, so around the age of 15, when this dream drops on you, was this, so when the dream started dropping, did they start with this dream, or was this in the mix of this general period?
Good question. For some reason, that one really stood out, but I think it was maybe in a period, because I also had many, many, many dreams at this time of looking up in the sky and seeing battles between small lights, like firefights, or planes battling in the sky, but very small. Constantly I kept seeing this vision of fighting, but not planes that you could see much higher, like at very high altitude. Imagine planes having a dogfight at very high altitude. Constantly recurring dream of that. And that's also a lot in the novel. It plays a big role in the novel.
And okay, so in that imagery that's happening at this time, did those planes, were you registering them as stuff like from, that we know, instead of unidentified stuff?
No. Yeah, it was, I didn't. So I didn't think, oh, this is this or this is that.
Okay, yeah.
That dream, that was unique to those dreams. And it was really scary.
I'm sure. So when you say they were scary, though, how did you interpret that as someone at that age? So did they fall into like the nightmare range, or were they just, because there's the lesser kind of nightmares that are not,
That would be at the lesser kind.
Yeah, I get you totally. And that's the way it kind of came off when you're talking about it. That's interesting. And it's interesting that there were so many. What other dream images stand out from this kind of initiation into that realm?
And then another recurring dream of being in a plane crash. I had that so many times. Being in a plane and it's crashing.
Ooh.
Oh my God.
Do you ever have the ones where they're low flying, like you're going for hours
Yes.
at 10 feet above the ground, going to crash?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know what that's
And have you ever had where you fall out the back?
Yep.
I've had that so many times where it's low, so low, and you're like, oh my God. And then I fall out the back and I'm on the ground and I watch it crash. I've had that many times.
So in the dreams where you're in the plane flying, was there a degree of lucidity there, or did it feel more you were in control?
Yeah. I have to say, I've never had a lucid dream.
Okay.
I've never woken up, and it's something I've always wanted to do, but I've tried too. I put that thing around the house where you kind of look at your hands. Am I awake?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I've never been able to wake up in a dream. But the
Well,
dream life for me is so like at my age, it's like it's my other world. So I dream every night.
oh,
And
excellent.
yeah.
Well, Robert, you're having a lucid dream right now. Okay, so back to the planes. A lot of times these planes, so when we get out of late Victorian and you know, earlier early 1900s, maybe even up to the mid-century, when planes were considered in all the symbolic books about organizations you're involved with. Some of the newer thought, and this has always vibe with me, is when you're in vehicles flying, this is actually almost like a prelude to flying dreams where you don't need assistance, you don't need the training wheels. So, which also starts to come hand in hand with lucidity, which is always just right there. So I find when I hear that, this is where I'm coming from. And so the fact that you've had so many at that point was interesting. So from 15 on, and all these, I like all the plane imagery. And did you have any lulls from 15 on till now? You just told us you dream every night. Have there been?
Yeah. I used to drink a lot, and I think during the drinking period, I didn't dream that much.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
When you drink a lot, you kind of lose. I kind of lost the dream world, and I think that's part of the problem with drinking too much
Hmm.
is that you lose the dream world. Like
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever listen to Joe Rogan's podcast, but they have that thing where he goes sober in October. And it was so funny to hear Rogan be like, "Wow, I can't believe I'm dreaming so much." I'm like, yeah, maybe if you're bombed and stoned every night, you don't dream so much.
That's a good way to prepare for No Nut November.
Boom, boom. This is our early show, people. We're awake. Um, yeah, that is. I've never been a. I mean, I've never been a heavy drinker, so I haven't experienced the no dreams from it. I mean, certainly I've enjoyed alcohol and had a very good time.
It's probably
And
more the pot with Rogan.
Yeah, with Rogan, it probably is more the other.
it's funny though that doesn't affect my dreams, but I hear it seems like everyone says that. Maybe I'm not doing enough. I don't know. Uh, Um, Okay, so that's good to know. All right, so I want to kind of dive into the dream architecture now. So in general, this is just overarching. How do you experience the dream world? Are there places you recognize? What's the architecture like? Is it tactile? Is it black and white? Is it color? All that good stuff.
I would say there's a little bit of color. I would say there's no real, I mean, apart from the recurring dreams, there's no real continuous kind of, there are no places I go back to. Sometimes I think everyone has, homes when we were kids that we go back to. So I'm in a house that I lived in, but actually just in the dream world, no, it's a little bit dark. It's color, but not bright color. And occasionally I will get absolutely aesthetically perfect dream. I mean, every couple of years. A dream that's like a painting that's absolutely perfect from an aesthetic point of view. That's happened to me a couple times. So I wasn't lucid in the sense where I was awake. But you see, I just want to say one thing. When you have, at least in some of the dreams I've had that were aesthetically perfect, I wasn't, it seemed so real that but yeah, I wasn't conscious of being. I don't think I was conscious of being in a dream, but it just seemed so perfect. It was almost like another world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the cornerstones for being lucid is that moment where you're going about it just like going about your day here, in waking life, and you realize, oh, I'm dreaming, and it's usually, of course, it's just that sense right there. And a lot of times, what I'm gathering, the more people I speak with now, is that also can trigger them out of their experience they were having, and I'm hearing this more often. People prefer not to be,
Lucid.
yeah, not to be lucid, because then it changes the actual dynamic of the experience they were having, that they were enjoying. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's everyone's a little different, but really there's so many similarities.
Like
Um,
one dream I did have from that period that was absolutely beautiful. I was in a small church. It was like a Protestant church in the north. And I'm
mhm.
sitting in the church and there was no crucifix. I remember it felt like a Protestant church. And I fell asleep and I woke up in the ocean and it was big waves. And I saw some sort of a religious symbol. And then the wave brought me to the shore and I laid down and I fell asleep. And then I woke up in that church and then I woke up. And in a dream like that, I mean, that was so beautiful. I don't think I would want to have been lucid because I would have messed it up. you know?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. That's amazing. I love that. Okay, so while we're here, let's talk about water. Water in your
Mhm.
dreams.
Lots of water. Oof.
Give me some images, give me some
Wait,
stuff to
what's
work with.
your sign, baby?
Oh, mine?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm Gemini. I got a
Gemini.
lot of air. I do,
Okay.
but my Mercury, I'm a triple Gemini.
Oh my
So I've
goodness.
got the sun, ascendant, and moon, but my Mercury's in Cancer.
Oh wow.
Mercury rules my chart.
I
Hmm.
was sensing some Cancer. That's interesting. The
Yeah,
Gemini
Mercury's.
though, triple Gemini.
Robert Phoenix always says I'm a serial killer. He's like triple
Yeah,
Gemini.
if you were a woman, I would run away.
Oh my goodness. I have Gemini rising, so I'm relating to you on that alone. Well, no wonder you're a writer though. I mean,
Yeah,
that's under
I had
Mercury.
no choice. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, back to the water stuff. Give us I really, yeah, just I'll move through it, but give us some water imagery from your dreams. And the
So
darker stuff is my favorite, by the way.
yeah, but yeah, I'm not. It's not so. It's not. I can't say it's so dark, but so as a kid in Florida, we fished a lot. So the idea of kind of sitting there looking at the water and fishing kind of got into my head. And one of the first memories I have, not first memories, but the first traumatic memories, I went down, I was by a canal and it was at night. And I looked down and I saw like some kind of a monster and I ran like hell. And I think later I realized it must have been a manatee.
That's the
I,
darker stuff I'm talking about. Did it look like a manatee?
I was so terrified. So I might have been 10 or something. I don't know. Imagine I just walked down, it was like a dock. And
Mhm.
I like to fish at night. That feeling of just kind of tossing the
Yeah.
line in the net. Ding,
Yes.
there's nobody there. That silence. I love that. Alone, especially to fish alone at night.
I
And when I
love
looked
fishing.
down and saw that beast, I remember I ran and I never told anyone. I was terrified. But then later in life, I realized it probably was a manatee. Probably.
Well,
Scared me.
and I mean, they've often said that, these reports of people seeing mermaids were actually manatees and all that too. Um, well, that's interesting though, but it scared you.
Right, that scared me. So later on in life, I've had many dreams, but it's generally positive with water. I'll see a water and then fish just start emerging, hundreds of them, and all sorts of aquatic creatures. And those are always precursors to very rich periods in my life creatively.
Oh wow.
I had
And
one when I moved back. Oh, sorry, but I moved back to the States after having lived abroad for a long time. And I was trying to get a job I was working in online media. And I got a job. I landed a job in San Francisco, right in Silicon Valley. I was really happy. I had this dream of hundreds of, like, it was like Venice, and all of these animals just jumping out of the water. And I was like, this is going to be a rich period. And it was. You know, I mean, my career and everything developed in the online side.
That makes sense with the astrology too, with your Mercury and Cancer.
Right.
Very, very intriguing that when you have these dreams where lots of the aquatic stuff's coming forward, is there anything ever fantastical that we don't experience here?
Yeah, some of the creatures are just bizarre. You know, they're like kinds of fish that you never see.
And are any of them ever humanoid?
No, I don't think so. They all seem like animal.
Okay. Yeah, cool. That's why I'm always trying to figure out what's going on down under.
Right, right.
You know, there's so much there. There's so
I
much
think it's
there.
the way you get to space.
Absolutely. Well, and this is a good segue. There's a couple just let's play a little word association game here for a second. So first thing that comes to your mind.
Oh, don't.
All right. I'm doing this once in a while with some people, and since you have so much to bring, I want to get a little bit. So, all right, space, deep space.
The first word that comes to mind.
Yeah.
It was time. Right.
Oh, Chronos. Yeah. Deep water.
Deep water.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw some kind of a weird image came out, like some sort of a creature.
Okay, creatures. That's good.
Cthulhu.
Inner Earth.
Mother.
These are kind of all answers I would. Are you me?
Maybe it's because I study a lot of the mythology. Those are the first things that pop out too.
Yeah, I mean they're classic. It's great that these are like your first things. Okay, and now like ETs.
I kind of get a link on ET.
Okay, that's fine. What about the occult?
I would say Aleister Crowley.
Mr. Crowley. And then music.
Bach.
Nice. And so we're going to use music as a segue here. Do you experience music in your dreams?
Very rarely. I'm trying to remember a dream where I heard. I guess a few times, but pretty rarely. Pretty rarely.
Yeah, it's something I'm looking into exploring a little bit more. It's an odd thing, right? I personally, I don't know that I can pinpoint much. I'm sure maybe it's there, but it's one of those things that all of a sudden popped up in my head. Okay, so this was the 15. We had the lull. You're 15, and then what brought you back into heavy dreaming again after you were drinking? I guess that was your heavier drinking period.
Yeah, then it sort of left, no? And I became, when I was writing, which novel was I writing? I was writing Cactus Land, which was the novel that was based on those early dreams. And there I was very into meditation. I was meditating a lot. I was studying Zen a lot. I was pretty focused and pretty intense. I began to dream about work. So I could write. I had a really weird schedule. I would write maybe all night till like 6 a.m. And then I would sleep. And a lot of times the work would go on in my head while I slept. And so I would wake up and it was a bizarre feeling because you've been asleep, but you've been working all night on things in the novel. For example, I remember once I would actually see like shapes, like a triangle, a circle, but it related to the narrative structure. So it was really very, very clear sleep. And that was different. That was something strange, to get that sort of clearness in those dreams.
Jerry, you look like you got a question.
No, it's okay. It's good.
You held that. I'm like,
I've heard that from other people in other ways. The same thing that you're doing things in the background while you sleep. That's a common, semi-common thing.
And have you heard the new research on this new dream research where they talk about, for example, pianists? So if a pianist is practicing a piece, when they sleep, they're actually practicing it in their head.
yes.
And when they wake up, it's better. So now they know, scientific research that as we sleep, we do improve on
Yes.
skills.
But
That's how I learned to temple dance, literally through dreaming.
it could also be an efficient thing to do, to find the best way, the most harmonious way to store that muscle memory or that information.
Right.
Would be the perfect way, and you have it in your head. You just can't reproduce it because you can't play it yet. Whatever. It just might be more efficient to store that way than the way you have it.
Yeah, exactly. And with, especially with very difficult, even for example, fighters, good boxers, you'll hear them talk about they'll play the fight over in their head before the fight over and over and over again, and that actually helps them.
I think football coaches don't coaches play the other team's stuff over and over. It's the same thing. It's you learn their moves. I had one more comment on your background network, your background job system. That's exactly a pattern that Philip K. Dick used. Or he'd be up for days writing and then crash and have crazy dreams.
It's amazing. And if you can push yourself to work, work 36 hours on something, when you dream, oof, it's so intense, and the work just continues.
Yeah.
It's so is and this so this is a common experience for you to have this symbiotic relationship with your dream life as you're working on projects, or was it anomalous to that project?
No, and on this film, sometimes the cycle it was just beautiful, no, because it was just an enormous amount of work till absolute exhaustion,
Mm-hmm.
and then sleep, and you could feel it all kind of functioning. Then you wake up and you just dive back in.
Mm-hmm. It's any day that one is open to this actual line between states of consciousness is to me moving forward into lucidity in both places, waking life and in the dreaming. I think that's part for me, and I guess that leads into this question, which is kind of forward a bit usually, but I want to get to it because we're talking about it now. But what do you think the role of dreams actually is? Because we hear how it's serving you in your life.
Right. For me, it's absolutely clear it's a conduit to that other world. So we could say it's in our waking consciousness, the ego functions for us most of the time. If we consider the other world as large as the physical world, Jung used to talk about that. Imagine the physical expanse of the universe, the expanse of the self is as big, and the dream world is one of those conduits. And in my life, it's absolutely the best. It's the richest time of my life. Absolutely, without a doubt. It's richer than this life. I prefer that experience than this. And most of my dreams are unpleasant. I would say more than 50% are unpleasant. So I'm not one of these people who has pleasant dreams either.
Well, that says a lot about, there's a lot. We could analyze the hell out of that. But on the surface, though, as you know, in life, we need, especially now that, I don't know, different, and been exposed to these different religious ideas. you got the tarot going. The hardships are what give us, that's where the gold's coming from. This is where we actually grow. And so for that in the dream world, we're working on it in a different level. I think it's absolutely the best. You're looking at it in the best way. You're embracing it. So when you're having these difficult dreams, what can you give us an example of some of those?
Yeah, I can give you I can give you one, for example, that I put into the novel. So this is in Cactus Land. I was walking through, there's a city and there's sort of insurgents or terrorists or something, like an insurgent army. And I'm walking through the back streets trying to avoid the fighting. And as I'm walking, I feel there's a man next to me. And I look over and he's taller than I am, dressed in black with a big scar on his shoulder, down his cheek. And I remember thinking, this guy, this is pretty serious. And I just remember just running. And then later on in this dream, I run into a basement and I get into the basement and it was a perfect cube. And I'm in there and I feel fear and I see a black sphere in the center of just appear. And I knew it was pure evil. So I knew I was in a room with pure evil, but pure evil. It was fascinating. It was terrifying.
Wait,
Absolutely
that's interesting. Which of the two objects was the evil one?
The guy walking with me he was walking by my side and when I took off, that was somebody who I was afraid of. But when I got into the basement, that sphere, that was pure evil.
That's fucking interesting, because the sphere is, in a lot of mystery school teachings, the sphere is divine. It represents divinity, well, especially in Freemasonry, right? You've got the circle. The square represents the earth, 2D, and the circle and the sphere is 3D, it's divine. Yada yada. Yeah, that's cool. But to have a dark one, a dark entity that's divine.
Yeah, and black. And just pure evil, just radiating evil. But it's a little bit scary.
And there was a black cube there too?
It was inside a cube. So it was inside a basement.
That's amazing. What did the sphere look like?
It's a trap.
It was just like it wasn't like a perfect sphere. It was kind of radiating blackness. It was like a ball of light, kind of. I imagine a black light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it wasn't like a perfect globe.
Right. Oh man.
But I just want to tell you one connection to this. I lived in Spain once, and I probably shouldn't say this, but anyway, we went out. We all did acid, but like crazy acid, and it was the night. It was Holy Thursday. So in the Catholic religion, Good Friday is the day that Jesus dies. No, he was crucified. So they dropped me off on a beach, and on this Good Friday, and there I am, whacked out of my mind on acid, and I'm walking on the beach, and I hear these drums, boom, bada boom, bada boom, and it was a procession. So I get in the procession. Here I'm on acid, and I'm in this procession, and these guys banging these drums. And then, very interesting, similar to this dream, two guys come up next to me, start walking with me. Holy shit. And then I realized what happened was, in this procession, guys would carry the crucifix for maybe 100 yards. And before you carried it, they walked beside you. And then they stopped. So the drum goes boom, bada boom. And then these guys put the belt on me. There I am on acid, out of my mind. I've been in a discotheque till like 6:30. And they put the crucifix on me, and there I'm carrying a crucifix through the beach. And I was like, oh my God. And it kind of reminded me of that dream with that guy standing next to me.
That's phenomenal. I love that. So, but this is exactly a perfect psychedelic experience. So you went from one extreme in the discotheque partying mode, right, into a high religious experience.
Yes.
That's phenomenal. And in your in the come down of acid, which is always the best part when you're piecing it all together. For me, it has been, it's been so long, but I remember loving that aftermath. What did you make of that?
I remember I went back and I was sitting in a bar. So now it's about 10 in the morning. I'm drinking beer, and I was just, I just couldn't believe it. I actually put that in another novel of mine. But yeah, I just remember it was just like, how did this happen from this temple of just craziness? One of these discos. Spain has a wild nightlife.
Yes. Well, you're a
the
blessed discotheque anyway.
Yeah, and that beat of like boom, boom, boom with that whatever music was, they used to call it bacalao. To hear that other drum, and I was just completely flipped out. I was, it was just like, whoa. It was pretty interesting. No.
Did you glean anything though from the other end of it when you're on the beach with the crucifix and then that high, the high, especially in Spain, high religious experience? Did anything come through in?
Oh my God, yes, because I mean that moment, and the fascinating thing was I didn't know. So I was just walking, and the music, I was hypnotized by the music, and when those two guys pull up, so for me, the fact that you don't live life happens to you, and all of a sudden they put that belt on, like it's you've got to carry this crucifix. And remember, so I followed it all the way to the end where they stop and a priest comes and they talk about the dead in the sea. How at the end of the universe,
Oh,
God
wow.
will take
Yeah.
this thing. So it for me, it was a massive liturgy. It was like a real, it was almost like it was set up for me because I was on acid. Of course, you think everything's for you.
Right. The world is you there.
So yeah, that experience was incredibly powerful for me. And of course, having obviously I'm a Catholic, or I was a Catholic, whatever. Yeah, it was just like, wow.
How old were you at this time?
I was pretty old. I must have been, hold on. What year was that? Oh, Jesus. Maybe I was like 26, 27, something like that.
Oh, possibly around Saturn return.
Hold on. Was that? Oh, yeah, it was a little bit before. It would be a little bit before. Yeah. So it was, 26, 27, maybe.
Yeah, you're approaching it, the shadow of it, as they say. So, okay, also with this dream and this thread, I wanted to get your definition of pure evil.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. I don't believe in evil as an entity. So I look at it as, especially from the esoteric point of view. So most esoteric teaching you'll have the light and the earth. For example, earth, pure materialism, and pure spirituality. I would define evil as pure materialism, but I don't look at it in a moral sense.
Okay.
Or in an ethical sense. But when we talk about evil, it's pure materialism.
Yeah. And that, that does seem to be the common, although it does it's muddled with, you start getting the emotional stuff going with it.
And I think that's a mistake. I personally think that's a mistake.
Oh, I totally agree.
I think that you have to just look at evil. First, there's the shadow side of it, right? There's our shadow material side that we project as evil. But I don't see, and I've been around evil people. I mean, evil, people who've done bad things, let's just say. And I honestly, not something that, I mean, I don't want to spend all day with them, but you know what I mean? I don't feel that total rejection, you're evil. No, okay. People who are just focused on material gain, and that's all they do. That's all there is.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It usually takes a crisis of consciousness to kind of show another side, I've noticed in my studies. Okay, and so I also want to touch on, while we're here, psychedelics at all. Had you done them and had like in any exploration of doing anything like that, did anything evoke a sense of altered states of consciousness in that you could bilocate, or that this Robert in your flesh in this particular life is transitory on a deeper level?
Yeah, I mean, my life has been marked by psychedelics. The two most important experiences in my life were when I was 16, I had a mushroom experience.
Oh,
That
could you tell
this
us about that? I love the sacred mushroom.
Oh, yeah, it's actually a really funny story. A really good friend of mine and I, we had made a pact when we were like 15. We're going to do every drug possible. So we meet these guys and we're like, we want mushrooms. So they bring us these mushrooms. We make some tea out of it. And I never forget, we're throwing the football around, and I'm like, this is bullshit. This is like not even like a joint. So we go back to these guys and we're like, you guys are full of shit. So they come back with remember those paper grocery bags? And I never forget, they said, eat all of these. No tea. Just eat them all and see, and you'll see. They're like, no charge. You know, you paid us once. So we ate all these things at 7 a.m. God knows how much it was. Fresh. We just ate them in peanut butter daily sandwiches. So about 2 hours later, I had the ultimate spiritual experience on mushrooms. Like the veil got pulled back. It was the second most beautiful experience I ever had. So I loved everybody. And the fact there's one thing that I found in the two powerful experiences I had. And this was so interesting. Everybody was waiting for me. So they had this thing like, where have you been? We've been waiting for you. Welcome to the party. I'm like, are you serious? They're like, yeah. Everyone had that. So it was so interesting. It wasn't like I found something. Like they were already there waiting for me. And the other part of it was everybody was doing exactly what they should be doing. Everybody. And everything was exactly the way it was supposed to be. Those from that mushroom experience, I've had many mushroom experiences, but that one was like,
How old were you when that one happened?
I was like 16 or 17.
Oh yeah, you said 6.
And I remember I was in algebra class. I never forget this. There was a girl next to me. I was madly in love with this girl. I was just madly in love with her. And I was just like playing with her ring. And the teacher's looking at me like, what the hell are you doing playing with this girl's ring? And he was an algebra teacher. And I was like, God, you're such a genius. All those equations going down the x equals 2 was so beautiful. Just all made sense. It was a beautiful experience. Very powerful.
That welcoming sensation is also common in DMT experiences. Like,
yeah, I wanted to tell you about another the one I had after that with the DMT, because it was much more powerful in the DMT.
Lay it on us.
So this is when I'm 16, right? When I'm in my 40s, I find Terence McKenna, and I had already studied Zen for God knows how many years before I found McKenna, the tapes of McKenna, the recordings. And I'm like, shit, all this stuff in Zen, I had it when I was 16. Oh, he's right. Like all that time, sitting there in pain, and I am not a flexible guy. So when I meditate, oh my God, it's like the knees are ready to just burst, And so McKenna was always talking about DMT. And in the middle of making this film, I found a place where they had these ayahuasca DMT retreats. So you go, you do the ayahuasca the first day. And the second day, they give you 5-MeO. So I had a horrendous ayahuasca experience, just like gut-wrenching, horrible. I just wanted to die. And then the next day, I did the 5-MeO DMT. And just like you said, now the one thing about the DMT experience that I had, it lasted 40 minutes.
Wow.
Very long. And they thought I was dead. Some people thought I was dead. They were ready to call an ambulance because I took a massive hit and then a second hit. And I think then they plugged my nose and I just passed out. And when I woke up, just like you said, Jerry, all the people who had been there were there, but they're like, you made it. I was like, and I screamed so loud. Are we allowed to cuss on this show? Or no, better not. You can?
Go for it. Say whatever the fuck you want.
So I screamed at the top of my lungs. You are fucking kidding. Like, I have a strong voice too. If I scream, apparently people could hear this for like a long way. And I was like, this is it? And I just couldn't stop laughing. And I had made it to the other side. So I thought I had made it. I thought I was done. I was really thought I was like, I made it. It's over. The joke, the whole cosmic joke, I made it. And then I had to come back. And I really, really, maybe that's why it was so long. I really, really, really did not want to come back. I did not want.
It strikes me as a possibility that that's the afterlife, or maybe the, those things come into people. That's one actual, one explanation for it.
Oh, totally. Because when you read what do they call them? The NDEs?
NDEs, yeah.
They're just like that experience I had. It's like, you made it. Thank God. And then I fell. So I fell through all of these colors and schemes. And the one thing that they taught me that I really focus on in the end of the film is there is no singularity. I would try and grab, and they'd say, no, fall. And then the awareness just is like, and I think what happens, you know why we can't talk to the dead? This is just my opinion. After that experience, because once you start going, it's just like, I don't want to be crude, but it's almost like an orgasm that never ends. And you just become aware and aware and aware and aware. Why would you ever want to fucking come back here?
At some point that would get boring because you'd be aware of everything and there'd be nothing to do.
But that was what they taught me. I kept trying to like go, okay. And they're like, let go. And then it just becomes more and more and more and more.
They might have wanted you to experience that.
No, maybe. Could be.
And the other question that comes to mind is, what do you think? Okay, what the machine elves, whatever you want to call them, what were yours like jesters? Were they grays? What did you see? What were their?
No, this was what was so weird. The 5 people there, it was them.
Them who? Oh, the people who you were with at the cottage or the place, yeah.
It was so weird. The shaman's there. It's the same guy. And what he was actually saying to me is, like, snap out of it. Like, you're okay. Because I was on the ground for a long time unconscious. And he's like, stand up. But what I was hearing was, you made it. Welcome. So they became, the people there became the welcoming party.
That's an interesting overlay.
I've never heard that.
It was so that was what was so weird. And the next day when I woke up, I kept telling them, you were my mother.
You were there.
Fairy Wizard of Oz.
And you were this. And they're looking at me like, Jesus, man. I mean, and these are people who do DMT all the time. They're like,
yeah, right. It's uncommon, but very interesting.
Wow.
I find it extremely interesting. And I love how that same idea was presented to us in Journeys Through Oz. Also, so I
want to do DMT so bad, but I'm scared to death to do it.
Well, let me tell you something. I watched people do DMT afraid, and it's not good.
Yeah, I know.
Because you see them going, it was amazing because I was like, why are you afraid? And you see people, I don't want, you got to be ready. You got to be ready to die. You got to want it that badly. It's almost like when Jesus talks about it.
I think it's the same experience. It's the same with all hallucinogens. If you're going in a bad experience, in a bad state, you're going to have a bad experience.
Right. Set and setting.
Absolutely. But with DMT, you've got to be, because there's a guy who's just written a book recently on hallucinogenic. I was listening to him on Rogan. And he said
Paul Stamets? Paul.
No, Stamets is the mushroom guy. This is a guy who's a bit more square.
Okay.
And he said the 5-MeO, because the 5-MeO is considered the more spiritual of the two. The regular DMT is more the elves, and the 5-MeO is more a more God one. And he had a bad trip on the 5-MeO. So, look, you just got to say, do you want to know God? Do you really want to know God? If you do, no, just do it, man, because it's unbelievable. You have no fear of death at all. Fear of death is gone. You're almost longing for it. That's why now the dream world is so wonderful. It's like I get a little taste.
Well, isn't this a big lesson? And I mean, for me, it has been in my life of letting go is always the bit, one of the cross keys. Letting go is like a silver key for me. And it's no different in any other state of consciousness that, it holds through for me in all of them. And when I am resistant to it is when I get the bad experiences, even in waking life.
You have to let go of everything and
Hmm.
everyone. It's the only way.
Hmm. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. In all of this, so let's pull back into, like, say, your waking life. How much do you use? And you already talked about this a little bit with the sport analogy and all this, but active imagination, is this a part of your daily experience, or is it more when you're arting, like writing?
Right. Yeah. So I try and meditate as much as I can, a couple times a week, sometimes every day. But active imagination, I did have a period where I can't remember the name of the book I used to use, but to try and do the Jungian type of active imagination.
Yeah.
And I used to do that a lot. So you make a left turn, you go through the cave, and then you meet the animal,
Well,
and you
however,
try.
you can pack it in a million different ways, but it's,
Right.
it's you're hypnotizing yourself in a weird way.
Exactly. I there was a period when I did that, and you know what? I had so many. The ego, it's so hard to know with the ego. So I'm not sure I'm very good at it, but I tried. But I did have one bizarre experience doing that. I was digging. There's one exercise where you dig and you dig and you dig and you dig.
Yes.
And I dug up a big eye, and it was just sitting there. And if in the end of my film, in the last section in the world, I do this thing where you see sort of the first images of the world, and then there's a black eye that comes out. So I put that eye in the film. When the eye comes out, that black. But I never forget. I mean, there's this massive black eye sitting there, and I'm dumping water on the eye. Keeps looking at
So, and to a lesser degree, though, I think of, without being formalized with active imagination, I have come to, yeah, I don't do any of those kinds of, unless I'm with a group of people and that's what's happening. Like
it.
it can happen. But what I consider active imagination now, as I have gone through life, is deep contemplation onto my external environment. So it's pushing forth my internal stuff and directly overlaying it onto the world around me. And so in doing that, I'm also, it's an act of will, right?
Hmm.
So I'm intentionally, consciously doing this, and I'm overlaying, say, a dream onto a sidewalk. There's talk about this all over, but say, like in a magical sense, I want to manifest something. I want to get, you know, I want something, and so
Hmm.
I start imagining,
Hmm.
actively involved with intent, that thing happening, like sympathetic magic, and um,
Yeah.
and so I have found doing that, I've unlocked codes that have assisted in, yes, attaining that, but also there's some sort of like something happening with the synapses process, um, that seems to generate more of a sense of lucidity in the now. And some people might just call this daydreaming.
Hmm.
And I think pardon
A
this,
little
but
bit
it's
more
a little more.
active. Oh.
Exactly. So I was gonna say it's a little more active, to be not to be redundant. Um, do you do that kind of stuff, like active daydreaming or pushing your will into?
Constantly. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. I do that all the time. And I think you've probably found the more you do it, then you get these very potent synchronicities begin to just come out.
Yes.
But
Yes.
the real synchronicities, because I hear a lot of people talk about synchronicities, but they're too clean. I
Hmm.
think real synchronicities, they're always throw you for a loop. It's like it's a little bit like reading cards. I mean, tarot reading is that's what you're doing. So when you go through that liturgy and you do the spread, there's the question, the moment, and then something pops up there. That's why divination is wonderful for this.
Yes.
And so it begins to pop up all over the place. And it can be very, very, very bizarre sometimes. Very bizarre. And then it comes through the dream world. Like I once met, I don't want to go into too much detail, but there was a relationship I had with someone, with a woman that probably was not the best one in the world. And the first day, a brick fell off a building. First day walking with this woman, and just hit my shoulder, like here.
This is in waking life.
Oh, yeah, this is in waking life. Then a silver bracelet I had bought for her just broke in half. And I didn't buy it in like some like cheapo store. It was like a normal silver bracelet, just went black. And then I had a dream about driving off a cliff, this woman in the car. So, you know, when you need to know something, you'll get the tap on the shoulder if you're kind of tuned in. You know?
That's almost more than a tap. That is excellent, Robert. That really is. Like it couldn't have been more clear to get your attention. That puts you in a good moment.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's just like, holy shit. You
know? do you know your blood type? Are you Rh negative?
No, I think I'm the most normal one.
That'd be O positive, I think.
O positive. Yeah.
No, that's not normal.
Well, I thought I heard the O positive was the most common.
O neg is O neg is universal. O pos, or one of them is universal. They might both be, but those are the two least common types.
I hear O negative is not common. I hear O is the most common. I was just listening to someone talk about this. O positive, I thought we're in the era of the O though.
Right. Someone told me I have the easiest one. So the one that's the best one, it's the easiest one. And that's why they always want my blood.
That's O positive.
A positive was the one I was thinking. A positive's 34%.
Yeah. O negative is pretty rare. Yeah. That's you're the universal donor, but O positive, you can take anyone's blood.
Oh, that must be me then, because they're always asking for blood.
You might be O negative because anyone can have your blood.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe it is that one. I can't.
That's
remember.
what I am, universal donor.
They used to always call me. Come.
Yeah, I bet you're O negative. That makes me think you're O negative because they can give it to anyone. Okay, and so, oh man. Oh, okay. So you mentioned earlier that you have lots of reoccurring.
You roboted.
Yeah, I know. And you both froze on my end. So you mentioned earlier, Robert, that you have lots of reoccurring dreams.
Yeah.
Do you still have them?
Yeah, it's interesting. The one with the planes I've had all my life. But
still.
Oh, yeah. And another one I have that is just absolutely bizarre is I'll be sitting at an airport watching planes land. Because I used to be a salesman, a lazy salesman. So I would just go to the airport and watch planes land. And I remember in these dreams, I just watch these planes land and then 2 or 3 will crash. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm always watching planes crash. Just bizarre.
That's interesting. What about and other ones? So when you have recurring dreams, what do you make of them? What's your thoughts when they're especially say step away from the plain ones that you've had your whole life, say like a new series comes in?
Oh, like a new one, a new set. I always try and, I for a long time, because I've been very interested in Jung's work. So I've read a lot of Jung, and I've gotten to the point where I almost stopped interpreting them. I just look for that. Like for example, one I had the other night that was so strange. I was walking and there was 3 frogs. And I kept following these 3 frogs, like in a triangle. And I'm kind of obsessed with the Detritus. I have it in my house and it's in the film. And I remember seeing these 3 frogs moving in this triangle. And then I see these these bizarre planes landing and these 3 frogs. Like, So it's almost more like an aesthetic experience. So I almost stopped trying to do the psychology of it, and I just look for forms, number connections, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like a little bit like in the film where
Yes.
that's what I kind of look for more. The psychological part, I just think I'm too old for it. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
there's no way to fix it at this point. So
that's what I'm actually looking for, less the psychological aspect and more the tangible stuff that, like, when you have reoccurring dream or reoccurrence period, is there something that it leads to physically, tangibly in your life? It's not necessarily a shift in your psychology.
yeah, because I've really kind of gotten away from the psychology part. But for me, it's like that sensation of it's an aesthetic experience. So when I have a really interesting dream or a good dream, it will stay with me all day. And I have that wonderful. Do you ever watch a film, like a really good film, and you come out, it's like in a daze for
Yes.
hours? That for me,
Oh, I love that.
I love that
Yes.
feeling. And at some point, when you get past the analyzing the film and what it means, I don't really care what it means. I just like if art works, it just brings you to that place and you can experience it. And so that's for me what the dream world is. It's it's a place of where I can get that aesthetic kind of transcendent experience. The experience of epiphany. And you can't
Yes.
explain epiphanies. You can't say,
No.
"Oh, well, it means this." You know?
It's funny. I mirror that. I This is why I don't tell people, like, oh, this piece of art was this or that. I refuse to go down that path. I think art is, and so much more is art than people call art. The way you decorate. I mean, everything is just a form of your expression. And I feel like it's almost raunchy to deconstruct everything. It just feels like, why strip away the magic, the luster? Why take the luster from the pearl? And
Exactly.
so I
Exactly.
like that deeply moving experience, and I like to not intellectualize it. I'm with you there. And that's a different me from a younger me. Now I'm just
Oh,
like, I
yeah.
want that. Give me the magic. So, okay, so in this kind of idea, where are you standing? It's a 2-point question here. So, and they may not seem related, but they are a little bit. So, precognition through dreams, and then also to start it, what's your idea of reincarnation? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I've never resonated with reincarnation ever until I was living in Buenos Aires, and I remember it was very strange. I was in a relationship, everything's going good, and I'm walking through a park, and this woman and we say, "Oh, there's a guy reading palm," and he reads her palm, and I was kind of crazy about this girl, and he tells her, "Oh, you're still in love with your old boyfriend." Oh God, why did
We.
I pay this guy 20? And then he looks at me and he's like, "Oh boy." And he went in and he really told me that he said, "You have a really dark past, like a very dark past." So I think I never resonated with past lives because in my past life I was probably somebody not very pleasant, like very unpleasant. So I have that, it's like that ominous feeling, and I think it comes through in my dreams, and that's why so many of my dreams are not exactly pleasant. Now I have a dark shadow, I think, pretty dark shadow.
Most
And the older
shadows
I get, but yeah, but I'm a little bit murkier than most, I would say.
are.
And so I
You're the
have that
cube around that sphere.
Exactly.
exactly, exactly. And that's what that dream was talking about. And so as the more I come to terms with that, which is not easy, not to come to terms with. I do actually have I have an intuition that there is probably something there, but I'm not sure I want to go too deep into that because, like you said, it's that cube. So do I want to know that black sphere? You know.
That's the Keebler elf inside you. It's all that's good.
Does Keebler still have those kind of commercials? We grew
Keebleros
up on those.
pequeños. Keebleros elfos, right? What? What the tree guns? Yeah, sure.
I don't know. It's been so long. I don't really expose myself to that stuff. I did always love those elves.
I know they kill my teeth now when I try them.
Oh my God.
I'm like, oh my God, how do I eat these things?
I know.
So,
we have a guest coming up in the future, Devin Maggie, and he just did a piece on where all really the elves he breaks down stuff that's just so brilliant. But it makes, now I'm looking at elves a little bit differently after this piece he just recently dropped. Okay, so the precognitive stuff.
Yeah, and for me, I've had the most important precognitive dream I ever had was, it was in that young period, in that explosive period when I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a well drowning, and I had my clatter ring on. So my identity was kind of connected to the Irish side a lot. And I was drowning, and the clatter ring was cut. It was stuck on a rock, and I was drowning. And I pulled my hand off, and the ring stayed there. And I climb up. I'm coming out of the water, so I'm drowning. I grab onto a rope. The rope's connected to a crucifix. I'm spinning around, and then finally I have to let go of the rope, and I land on firm ground. So that dream, what did it tell me? I had to give up my ethnic identity. It was drowning me, and having a little bit of problem with alcohol and being Irish. It's kind of. And then I had to give up the Christianity and let it go. But it pulled me out, but I had to let go. And I've had many dreams like that. Like I told you, the one in San Francisco that told me the future. The last really good one I had was, I had a big career change in about 2008. And boom, I had this dream, and it basically said, you're going to go back to teaching. And that's what I did.
Oh,
so
wow.
I have the key in my life, but in important moments, they just let me know, okay, this is what's coming.
Jerry, you look like you're gonna...
well, yeah, that goes against like the idea of free will. So it's more, you're going the wrong way, so you've got some kind of guidance which is poking you. How do you know that's not interference?
Say that this is a fascinating question. You mean that somebody's interfering with it?
Well, your nudges, your dreams, and whatnot. You look at it from another perspective. Someone is interfering with your free will because you're on a path, right? And then whatever you're doing, and then you have a dream which you take as advice to change professions. So your life has been interfered with by something.
Oh, I see what you mean. But in both cases, the decision had already been made. Like when I got that dream, I was just basically penniless in a field. And I'm not kidding. It was bad. And so I was like, what? I mean, I went from living in New York, in Manhattan, having a really good job in advertising to like nothing. And so there I am. And this dream was like, all right, you're not going to starve to death. Not yet, And so it's a little bit like there's a way. It's kind of like.
It's almost like that final nudge that you needed.
Like the what?
The final nudge, just a little bit of extra validation, whatever, and the nudge to get over that fence.
Exactly. And actually, when I had that teaching dream, I had just gotten a job, like a couple hours a week. And I was like, what am I going to do? And it's like, well, you're going to do this. Okay. It's like, it's happened to me a couple times. Yeah. So that's how I have them. Now, what I'm worried about is that initial dream that I wrote the novel.
The nuclear war.
In that novel, a lot of things have come true from that novel. And I have a sneaking suspicion that, that there's something strange in the future.
Yeah, it started about 6 years ago.
We're all thinking this, by the way.
Yeah.
Do you follow Tracy Twyman at all?
Oh, I love her.
So she published a book, God, it might have been in 2012, but it was short. It was around there, called Genuflect, which was like a conspiracy novel, but we've woven with her truths, you know, or whatever. But she said the same thing. It's starting to come true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in that novel, there's the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring happens in that novel. And I wrote it in 2003.
You're
So
just
there's a
in
lot of
tune
things.
with the CIA,
Is
maybe.
this the Cactus novel?
Cactus Land. Yeah, of my novels, if you want to read one of my novels, I think the best novel is Cactus Land. I mean, it's
Yeah, I've marked that. I'm getting that for sure.
it's free. You can download it on as Mobi, EPUB, whatever. It's
Yeah.
free. And that novel is, yeah. There's something in that novel that's beyond me, because it was woven. It was taking a lot of dreams and just weaving. So there's a story in there that's made, but that's not really the interesting story. The interesting story is the other.
Yeah, and the links for all those are in the description and the show notes.
I super love this. Says a lot about you, Robert, and Jerry and I share this stance, by the way. I love that your novels are free, that you're open source like that. This is it just is, it says a very, it just is I think where we need to be more in general, people.
Yeah, we gotta walk. If we're gonna talk the talk, we gotta walk the walk.
Absolutely. And
On that note, be sure to visit our Patreon. I'm kidding.
Yeah, right. So on all this, what is your idea of, what's your idea of the now that we're experiencing, your waking life and this whole, and it's not even, when I ask this question, I'm not looking for your whole timeline and your persona over the timeline. I'm looking for this now. What is now? And why is now always so relevant? And even for someone like you who loves dreaming and finds that more of the realness, that's where I am with that too. So what makes this so what makes the present so here? I mean, so acute, so real, so bloody.
Because in the present is where consciousness is. There is no consciousness in the past, and there is no consciousness in the future. You can only experience, like, for example, if you meditate, when you get to that point where you think, when you're just counting your breaths, and then you start thinking, okay, who's watching me count? And then you get that kind of buzz and that bzz. That's where consciousness is. You can't find consciousness in your past, and you can't find it in the future. And so when we're the most alive, the most conscious, is, at least for me, that's why we're here. We're here to become more aware and more conscious. That's it. We don't need any more dogma than that. And so where do you become more conscious? You become more conscious now. You can't say, like, oh, tomorrow I'm going to meditate, or tomorrow I'm going to do this. You can only be conscious now.
And how does that differ from, say, the state of dreaming?
Yeah, because in dreaming, I think it's a level of hyper consciousness, because real consciousness, and I go into this in the film, a lot of people have a problem with metaphor. Metaphor means something, right? So we look at a metaphor, say a crucifix, and we say, well, that means something. It means X, but it doesn't. It's a reflection of another metaphor. That's a reflection of another metaphor, and it does not stop. There is no end to that metaphor. So in the dream life, the metaphors are obviously metaphors. We know that they're metaphors. And so we can interact with them, I think, in a more conscious way. That's why I think the dream life is actually more real, because we're in a sense, we know we're dreaming, even if we're not lucid.
Yeah, that was beautifully put. Definitely. Okay, so take that, and then what about the idea of death? How does that weave into all this?
Yeah, and this is the post DMT thing has had a big effect on me for that because I feel like I know it. I feel like I've been there. So what death is a release from the body. And that's why I'm very interested in the Gnostic thought. This is a prison. This is not the, that idea, that sort of new age idea. Oh, this is all beautiful. You just don't know, don't understand it. I'm not completely convinced. I'm more of I think this is, we're doing time, and death is it's our get out of prison card.
Yeah, I've always had a sense that we're doing time.
I mean,
but in that, it's important that we realize, that there's, we do seize the moment and also embrace the hardship.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And like you said, take hold of the hardship and let it make you more. Because if you've, I mean, I don't know your personal stories, but if you've ever been really up against it, the only thing you can do is focus on now. That's it. That's the only way you stay sane. If not, you'll literally lose your mind. You'll jump off a bridge or something. And so,
Right.
yeah, allow the prison to just push you into that consciousness point. And then what happens? This world becomes less and less relevant. I mean, yeah,
Absolutely.
it's great, go watch a football game or whatever, but not really, not where the juice is.
And I love the word juice. I use it a lot. It's it really, what it does, I think, and this is where these parallels just are everywhere, but it just pushes you into a deeper state of lucidity. We become more lucid. You think lucid, you think liquid, and you think flowing, and there's so many dots to connect there. How about in dreaming and not in waking, although the membrane's thin. What about your experience with people that have passed on or other entities that may have been living lives and are human, dead people, ghosts, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean in the dream world?
In the dream world.
Yeah, I had a very close my friend who we did the mushrooms with. He died in an accident when he was young, his early mid-20s or so. And he used to come to my dreams all of the time. And and there was a big separation between us in the dream world. Like we couldn't communicate. That there was like a barrier there. And I never knew what that was about. But yeah, it felt like something was there. And I remember when my father died, I used to have tons of dreams of him coming back. He'd come back from the dead. He'd pop out of the tomb. And I was like, oh shit, he's back. I remember that. But I think that was more psychological. But with my friend, there was something about something, there was some sort of a barrier there that I don't know if he was trying to or I was trying to, but I felt like it was more than psychology.
And when you encounter, that's significant from my personal experiences with people, but with people that I'm close to. So I would get emotional. Like I'd have an emotional response. And even though that it was completely out of my control, as far as like cognitively, like there's my mom, or there's there's someone I love there. And that for me is how I ended up parsing out that barrier, which was always there, like a pane of glass, or a room up between us, whatever. Was it like that, or was it you were happy to see it? Like, what's your feelings when when you first started encountering him in the dream?
It was, oh, you're back, but so can we talk or can we hang out or like, well, not really. So it was sort of like it was a strange sensation of, yeah, it wasn't a physical barrier. It was like an emotional disconnect.
Very high priestess there, isn't it? With that veil and the finger, with the finger over the lips.
Yeah, it was. Ooh.
That's interesting. What about, okay, so, and then just maybe to backtrack a little bit on your papa, did you, okay, so not necessarily backtrack on your papa. Have you had dreams that someone passed before you knew it? And then you found out later?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, so now onto your papa. When you were encountering him, was it emotional? Of course, we don't know your relationship with him, so we don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. Was it emotional? Was it emotionally charged? Was it, why are you here?
Yeah, it was more like, why did you come back? I thought you were dead.
Mhm.
And he's like, well, yeah, I came back. Oh, and then, oh yeah, I just remember this. Yes, yes. Then it was very strange. He would come back in dreams, but he had another family.
Oh, wow.
And I remember this was a recurring dream. It was so funny because he had another family and another wife. I don't know if he had other kids. And I remember he'd be like, well, maybe we should meet or something. I'm like, all right, but mom's not too thrilled about this other family. Whatever. It was actually it got to become almost humorous.
I love that. I find that very fitting, actually, because he is in another place,
Right,
so
right.
it's carrying on. Wow, that's a first. That's excellent. Okay, so in the same vein, what about in the dreaming
Mhm.
beings, other beings that obviously feel like they have a sense of agency or sentience where it's not your own unconscious content?
Right. Yeah, where it's not some sort of psychological thing. I think I've gone over the really big one. In those couple dreams I told you, like the sphere and that Caesar figure who came down. But yeah,
Yeah.
occasionally I do get these figures. I never forget once because I spent some time in Russia. I lived in Russia. And I remember I had this dream where I was speaking Russian. My Russian's terrible. I can speak very little of it. I was speaking to a cook, a Russian cook, and he started giving me all sorts of advice about life. But I mean, yeah, but that was that wouldn't be a different type of entity.
That is extremely significant to me as someone who's studied martial arts my whole life. Like the masters are always like cooks and maids and stuff. Like they're these great masters, and those are the roles they're playing. What was the wisdom? Did you take anything away from that?
You know what? It kind of dissolved. I remember the wisdom, but I just remember him giving me lots of advice, sitting there and he's serving the potatoes, talking to me.
Oh God, that's
How can I
great.
understand? How can I understand this Russian?
Oh, Robert, that's seriously excellent. Also, I mean, we got presented with that in the Matrix too, with the Oracle, in the
Oh,
kitchen
right.
and all that, right?
Yeah, right, right. I use that in the film. I use that in the card in the
Yes.
right. I use that somewhere. Yeah.
Yes, you do. Okay, I think for me, I don't know what's going on in the chat because I'm not in there. I don't know if there are questions, but this is kind of where I usually find that this at least kind of our focus on dreams wraps up. So we can and we usually ask questions.
Sure.
See what
If
they
there's
have for
any
you.
questions.
I don't see any. Come on, people, come up with some questions. All right, here we go. Do you believe that any professional channelers, mediums, etc., are legit?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Wow. That's really that's a really, really tough one. I would like to think some of them are, but why? I'm going to piss people off.
Piss away.
All right, there's an element of bullshit in all mediums channelers, all of them. And this goes back. I had a very interesting conversation with a important person the other day, or a guy who's very intelligent. We were talking about, for example, Yogananda, the autobiography of a yoga. Now, a lot of people read that and say, "Oh, yes, he saw." A lot of that is bullshit. Now, I know I've just pissed a lot of people off, but it's okay because in the East, there is a tradition where you create the guru, and the guru has these experiences, and that's how he works as a guru. So when you start to believe that he does these things, he can guru you. So it's okay that it's BS. So part of the medium's job is to bullshit a little bit. But I am convinced that there are mediums and there are psychics who are excellent. But the problem is we all have a bullshit meter, especially Westerners, for this stuff. if your bullshit meter goes 50, I would say okay. If it pegged, then maybe look for a new one. I was probably too honest there, but
We
it's
like
fine.
honesty. In fact, we prefer it. I have a question. So in the production of 21 Faces of God, your wonderful documentary, were there any, what significantly came through? So I don't know your history on the tarot as far as like how long you've been into it and all that. But I'm wondering what came through like via dreams or inspiration, right? The muse and you did talk about this earlier, which is your projects in general, but were there any kind of, I don't know, things that really just were deja vu-ish?
oh, I trying to think of anything specific. I'm not, but what I had the feeling of making this film is I would work my ass off, go to bed, wake up, look at the rough cut, and think, I made this? And that's when you're doing good work. When you write or when you make films or you program, if you're just like banging out code and you come back and you're like, I wrote this code? Holy shit. That's when you know. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, or you find really brilliant things that you don't remember doing. That you did.
Oh, God.
That you did,
yes.
Yeah. Happens to me. It's crazy.
And that's a fabulous feeling. You come back and you're like, holy shit. So I had that a lot in this film. A lot.
That's excellent. Yeah.
And I just, to the young writers out there, that's when you find your voice. Because writing, for example, maybe your first 500,000 words are for the garbage. They're worthless. Well, one day, and with me, it happened. You get really pissed off and you write something and you wake up, you come back and you go, I wrote that. That's your voice. That's when you know you found your voice. That's you. And your voice is not what you want it to be, what you think it should be, what's politically correct. It's your voice. And when you have that feeling like, whoa, then you found your voice. Follow that. There you go. Found it. It might take 10 years. And it might not be great. It might not be what you want, but it's you. And as an artist, you got to find that. And in this film, it's me. This was my aesthetics, my thinking. It's me. It's my voice. Good, bad, or ugly, it's me. So when I finished it, I had that feeling. So many times you write a novel, you write a book, you write an article, it's like, no. When I finished this, I was like, no, job done.
I'm going to mirror that for you too. That's always when I know. I always feel like it wasn't even me. Like I'm I'm just a vessel, and that's what. And I always call it the muse. But remember that muse was a part of us. Is a part of us. That's your voice.
Maybe not.
Well, maybe not. Of course, there are lots of people say it was like a demon or whatever. There's so many theories, but in the end, as long as
when you connect, what disconnects, I mean, go back to Plato's cave.
Yes.
So much of it is what's projected. But when you actually see the sun and you see that light, that's you. Remember, you're part. Remember that thing from Jung, we're in the soup that's being cooked for us. We're part of that. So when it comes through strong, it's not a demon. It's not, and it's not you even. It's the whole self, the bigger self.
Yes.
Is coming through you. And that's why it's humbling. When you read that, when you really find your voice, you don't go, God damn, I'm a badass. No, you're like, it's humbling.
Yes.
You sit back and you think, and you don't think I did that. You think, wow, that's art.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. The ego thing is such a big trap, and we need it. And ego serves a great purpose. Sure. It's not like I'm anti-ego, but when we're talking about work on this level where it feels bigger and something magical happened, it is such a turnoff to find people hissing all over it with ego. It's such a
I know.
Let
it go. Let it sit there. Let it float. Let it be.
Yeah, absolutely. Detach. I can't remember. I actually had another question for you.
I have one from chat.
Okay, Jerry, go.
Someone asked what your top 5 occult sources or writers were.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or your top 3.
Tops are hard, but
your favorite 3. How's that?
Oh, what's that book? The Daimonic Landscape. Oh shit, I'm gonna forget his name.
I bet Jerry's on it.
I'm looking.
Daimonic. I love that book.
I read a book called The Eudaimonic Pie.
Oh, is it Landscape or? It's a wonderful book. I always forget the guy's name. I'm sorry.
The Demonic Imagination.
Anyway, it's about the daemon, not the demon. The daemon.
Right.
Demon. It's a really famous book, and it's a great book. And I don't why I can't always forget this guy's name. But anyway, maybe somebody it'll give them something to search, and they'll find. Wonderful book about what that reality is about, what the UFOs are about, the virgins of Fatima. He ties it all in together, crop circles, and he's a brilliant writer, and he's funny. I love that book. I would highly recommend that book.
What? They're not all demons?
No,
that's a running joke.
It'll come to me later. Maybe I'll pop. You know what? I'll find it later and put it in the chat. Okay.
You should join our Discord and hang out with us sometime.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put it in there.
You can put it in there.
Another. I love Dion Fortune. I think she's.
Yes.
I love.
Oh my goodness.
She's just so cool.
Which one in particular sticks out for you with her?
You know, of course, the famous one was the Mystical Kabbalah is a great book.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I like her fiction.
I do too. The Sea Priestess.
Yes, those are so good.
Yes.
And she's a good writer. Her prose is good, and she's so woo out there. I love her. She's great.
I think they flow so well. They're easy to read, and she really gets you into them. That magical thing, Robert. Suspension of disbelief happens for me with her.
Exactly, and you know, the older you get, the harder that is. It really is. You know, the late young, that stuff is really hard. So sometimes, what's his name? You know, you know what? I'll pop up a few of these because I'm just having name blanks, and I'll put it in the comments on the YouTube. Cool. Okay.
But yeah, it's hard to be on the spot with that stuff. I always shudder up too.
Yeah,
but late Jung is definitely where it's at. You know, when he was less concerned about the scientific community, and he was more like flipping the bird, essentially. I'm not too much because he did still want to be respectable, but I mean, it's certainly the Red Book.
If someone watches my film and gets into the real kind of number, that kind of stuff, I would highly recommend Aeon and the Mysterium. But they're tough. They're not easy books. They're quite difficult. So in the comments later, I'll leave. There's a Jungian who has lectures on the Aeon. And that helped me. So I followed the lectures and I read the chapters. It really helped. And I'll pop that.
Aeon's one of my favorites. Psychology and Alchemy is my favorite of the collected works.
Yeah, those are wonderful. Those are wonderful.
Have you been on Laura London's podcast? Speaking of Jung.
No, you know, actually, you know what? I think she only likes to have. If you have to be certified. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. She says that right there in their about.
Right.
Snooty like that.
She said it on our show. She said, I am a snob like this. So
I could still give her a poke. Okay.
Oh, but she would be great to have on this show, I think.
We've had her.
There, done that.
Oh, you've had her. Oh.
Yeah. Last year sometime. Yeah.
The Jungians have some kinky dreams.
That's what Jerry was hoping. Any more questions, Jared?
I've got one more here. Do you think Jordan Peterson is a worthy young scholar?
my thoughts on Peterson, if you're into Jung, well, one thing pissed me off about him a lot. He called Joseph Campbell woo woo or something. And I remember thinking, I hate to use a sports analogy, but I mean, if Jordan Peterson's like a AA pitcher with like a 5 ERA, he's like 28, Joseph Campbell is like an all-star. I mean, Jordan Peterson doesn't have he can't hold a candle to the culture that Campbell has at all. I mean, Campbell could know Sanskrit, French, Greek, Latin.
Yeah.
There's no comparison. So yeah, he's like sort of like he's a good way to get initiated, I think, into, and his Jungian thought. I mean, when Peterson talks about Jung, I find it real elementary. Now, I've studied Jung for a long time, so I mean, it's something I'm familiar with. But I was not impressed with his descriptions on myth. But what I do like about Peterson a lot is when he talks about the Big Five psychological, what do they call that? That Big Five theory. That part I find interesting. So yeah, there's parts of Peterson I think are good. And what I like about Peterson is he's turning on a lot of people to one, myth, and to Jung. So he's a good stepping off point for a lot of young folks who maybe, have never picked up a book on Jung. So yeah, I think he's doing good work, but there's much better out there.
I find him disappointing. I kind of got a little, I didn't even know who he was. And then was like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. I listened because I've been heavily into Jung in my life and went through analysis and all that. And I thought, okay, this guy's on it. And then he started interjecting all this crazy stuff and the Joseph Campbell stuff and other Jungians, other core Jungians. And I'm like, oh my goodness, talk about shadow.
I would say that more people have been introduced to Peterson through his political injection than what he's lecturing about. So I think people think he's, I don't know what he is really, centrist, but right-leaning type of dude. Or I don't think he's not all liberal, like crazy like that.
Yeah, the only thing I find, I don't know what you guys think, but I find something a little bit too angry about him. Like, I'm like, man, you got to relax a little bit. And just like, you're a psychologist. He's like fighting with everybody.
He's like the smart kid in the room that no one ever listened to.
Yeah.
That kind of outburst, listen to me.
Yeah, because, like have a conversation. Because when he's calm and he's having a conversation, even when he's in safe territory, he's just a little too angry. I think that guy's going to snap and do something crazy. I'm just afraid.
Shoot up a school or something.
Oh,
yeah, I just watch him and I just think that at one point psychologically he's wound up a little bit too tight.
I agree, Robert. I don't know anything about his life, so this is all conjecture. And I just got the feeling like he's never had real hardship. And because that's what I sense in people that actually haven't had extreme hardship, where you're just down and out and gutted and whatever it is. And he seems like he's the academic Jungian. Right, went through it, but everything's been pretty good in his life. His natal chart's full of trines, and so that's for me. Like, there's a depth that is not there, and in a lot of terms, in a lot of ways, he's almost like an NPC to me.
You know what? Yeah, he's an NPC, but for the other side. Like he's like the flip side of the meme. Totally. Because go back and look at Campbell at the end of his life, giving all these lectures. You see, he's so relaxed, and he was saying some harsh. I saw him saying some harsh stuff to certain groups, but he says it in a way that you see it flows nicely. He doesn't get anybody angry.
Right. He understands language. I bet he's on SSRIs or something. He seems there's some darkness there that we see seep out for sure.
I get that feeling.
And on that note, he probably's not coming on the show after that little bit.
I invited him months ago.
It was, seriously, I only just discovered him. I've stepped away from my Jungian roots in the last many, many years. And so I try to not come from that psychological stance
Yeah.
as much anymore. I find it, first of all, it puts people off, and I'm not trying to do that any more than my art does. And I feel like it also cripples us in a way if we're looking at the world from just that angle, even though Jung does represent the soul within psychology. And so, like the Red Book, right? I will stand on it and sing its praises.
Oh, absolutely. And I totally get what you mean, because psychology is great for your 20s and 30s, maybe
Yes.
your early 40s. But when you hit 50, it's, remember what McKenna said,
Out the window.
Culture kind of, it loses its intrigue. It loses, not as interesting anymore. And you got to move beyond to that part where you got to enter the forest and just see what the hell's in there, you know?
Absolutely. We need McKenna. I love McKenna so much.
So Oswald Spengler just brought up a really interesting question. Do you think that Peterson has taken over Timothy Leary's position at Harvard?
Oh God, I hope not. Because I mean, all right. When all these people say, Timothy Leary, he was MK, he was working for the CIA, and no fucking what? You know what I mean? I mean, if someone would offer Timothy Leary money, I'm sure he would take it. But Timothy Leary did, I think, wonderful things for our culture. I really.
Oh,
I wasn't saying it was bad or good. He could have a dual role. It could be Leary could have been unaware of his involvement with the CIA.
Oh, I think Leary probably knew. He was. I mean, he's a shady Irish guy who will take money from this side and do that. But his essence, I think Leary's essence was profound, like McKenna.
Mm-hmm. Right. Leary had soul.
Leary had soul, and McKenna had soul. I don't care if McKenna was taking money from the CIA.
Right.
These people would say, "Oh, he was an evil guy." Bullshit. He did more to wake people up. McKenna did than Jordan Peterson will ever dream of.
And is still doing it post-mortem. Like,
my God, yes.
Coming into a new stride.
Totally. So yeah, I'm I like McKenna and Timothy Leary's life. I mean, the guy had an interesting life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm kind of pro those guys.
He's like interchangeable with Andy Warhol in my mind.
Oh yes,
I'm right past that. I was born in '65, so it's later. I miss that stuff.
Right. And the older I get, the more, and having worked in advertising, when I go back and look at Warhol, I'm just like, Jesus.
People like that. I know.
Well, he harnessed the power of art.
Yeah.
He knew how to do it well, and it worked clearly.
Oh yeah, and what he teaches you, what Warhol teaches is very. There's something behind him. I know a lot of people think it's all BS, but Warhol, there's something else going on there. There's something. Jeff Koons, these guys, they're saying something that's just very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. Damn it.
Well, we're over our 2-hour mark anyways.
Are we?
Yeah. This has been one of those times where I just looked up and it's fast.
It's 1 hour and 59 seconds and 59 minutes. Now it's 2 hours.
Okay.
Oh, okay, cool. Excellent.
This was a fun show, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was great having you on.
Just flowed and went. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had a great time. It was a lot of fun. And I was really looking forward to it, and I had a great time. So thanks so much for having me on.
You're quite welcome. Is there anything you want to plug? The floor is yours.
Sure. The film is it's the 21 Faces of God. There's a long form version, and then there's a serialized version. And you can just go to YouTube and put in the 21 Faces of God, and it'll pop up. And so you can see both. And I've got subtitles in Chinese, Russian, and Spanish. So
that's excellent.
She's got friends who don't speak English or whatever. You can shoot it to them.
And where can people get your free books?
On Smashwords. And I think from this conversation, if you were interested in this, the Cactus Land, you can download it as an EPUB, in Mobi, or a PDF. And I think that would be interesting for folks interested in the dream world, because that's a novel completely based on dreams. And I think one dream that I think hopefully won't come true.
Oh, see the mystery there too.
It's in another timeline. We're in the safe timeline. We're going to ascend to 5D Earth. You know it. Come on.
Let's hope so.
We're going to get Nasara and Sharia law, and there's going to be a reset currency.
Well,
Yeah,
I want to
right.
thank you to our core chat out there. I'm not in there, but I can, all my love to you
It was
people.
pretty
You all know
lively.
who you
I
are.
missed it.
And Robert, thank you for the time. It's really cool that we're doing this earlier because I still have daylight now. We're ending. So those are my thanks.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it, guys.
And I'd like to thank everyone who listened tonight and who will listen in the future, and my future self who's going to listen. So be sure to give us a like and subscribe if you haven't. And we'll see you next week. We have a surprise guest. So you guys have a great night.